Welcome back to this week's episode of Mystery Garage. Now, in last week's episode, I told you all about this 2-liter 16-valve G60 car I picked up after being parked for about 4 to 5 years. Since getting it, I've rolled it under its own power, probably about 10 feet. It's got a heavy miss, a bunch of mechanical issues, rear brakes are locked up, a bunch of other stuff wrong with it. Actually, things I don't even know because I know absolutely nothing about this car. But what better way to get to know it than take it on a 4-hour cruise, and we got half a day to prep. Let's jump right into it. Welcome back to today's episode. You heard me exactly correct in the intro. There is a car cruise, one of the end of the season car cruises, one of the biggest ones we have of the year. It's about a 3-4 hour round trip. I actually didn't think I was going to be able to make it. It was a pretty cool event. I've been plugging away on the VR6 car here and there, building up some footage to be able to put together one of the last build episodes. And turns out tomorrow I can make it. So I have exactly half a day, a little bit more, a little bit less, to get a car I know absolutely nothing about, haven't driven it more than 10 feet because its rear brakes are locked up, know it has mechanical issues, know the car has problems, I know nothing other than what it is as far as how it operates, and I'm going to try and turn it around today or tonight to be ready for a cruise tomorrow morning. What could possibly go wrong? All right, to catch you guys up in case you missed the last episode, here's where we are. I recently picked up this car. It was built about anywhere between 10 to 15 years ago. It was driven a little bit and then it was parked about 4 to 5 years ago and hasn't moved since. It was a pretty cool build in its time. Definitely in its era was probably some of the best stuff. This is a 2-liter 16-valve engine, probably out of a Golf or a Passat or something to that effect. Has a Scirocco intake, Bonbrenner Motorsports kit, which adapts on the Corrado G60 supercharger. It's run by Digi1 Corrado management. Electronic fuel injection from the Digi1, all that kind of good stuff. It's also intercooled. It's got a built O2O box with a Pelican diff, Woolwood front 11-inch brakes, Corrado rear brakes, which are locked up right now. A bunch of stuff like that. And I thought this was a super cool car, or at least power plant, to use in one of the builds we have on the channel called Stepchild. That's definitely going to happen. But in the meantime, I'd like to get to know more about this car before I part it off to build Stepchild with it. So I thought, hey, if I am going to go on this cruise tomorrow, let's go ahead and use this car. So I quickly ran off to the parts store. I actually just got back. Picked up the box of maintenance goodies and I thought we can jump right into this. I'm hoping that what I need for the rear brakes, I have somewhere here around at the farm to make that work. If I got to swap calipers, got to swap rotors or something, depending on what's stuck, even if I need to put a new bearing on it or whatever, I have that stuff. So I'm hoping I have it so we can make that work. Parts stores didn't actually have anything really new on the shelf because, again, I just got back. I gave them probably half an hour's worth of notice of the parts I needed. So here we go. So what I'm going to try and knock out in today's episode, probably going to drain the tank because the fuel is probably pretty old. We're going to free up those rear brakes, figure out what's wrong with it. It could be the e-brake cables locked up. It could be anything. I don't really know. I know absolutely nothing about this car. So we're going to hop into the engine. I'm probably going to clean the injectors to try and get rid of that miss. We're going to go ahead and change the spark plugs, maybe the spark plug wires, because I got another brand new set from a while ago. Change the oil filter, change the air filter, bunch of kind of mechanical maintenance stuff. Need to hop in the interior just to clean it up a bit. I've actually done nothing since I got this car, except I actually threw the sticker on, which came with the newest episode or newest issue of Performance Volkswagen. So thank you, PVW, for that. Anyways, the front seats are the sports edition seats. They're supposed to be able to dump. I'm a tall guy. That seat isn't dumped. It's fully jacked all the way up, so my head almost hits the ceiling. So we have to figure that out tomorrow. I'm actually going to bring my son with me. because I don't want to break down on my own. So he can definitely be my wingman if we do break down on the side of the road. I've prepped the wife that she may have to come get us. Like I said, the cruise is about 3 to 4 hours round trip. I hope to be a lot of Volkswagens on the cruise. Really show you guys some cool footage. But today's episode, let's get this car ready and let's jump right into it with some time lapse. Let's do it. All right, sorry, before we jump into this time lapse, I think I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tackle first. I'm actually going to lift up the rear end and start tackling the rear beam. Figure out why those brakes are locked up, because if I need any time on anything, this car does kind of run. So if there's anything that I could do last, it would be kind of servicing some of the engine bits. First, I can't really do anything with the car locked up the way it is. So let's jump into the rear axle right now, figure out what's going on. I'm going to throw it in time lapse and I'll check right back in with you guys in just a minute. All right, let me keep you guys up to speed as I learn. This is pretty cool because you guys are actually having the very first walkthrough that I've ever done with this car. And trust me, when I looked at the car, I got a good enough deal on it that once I saw what was under the hood and it ran, I bought it. So there's a lot of stuff I'm learning for the first time, and I'm actually able to take you guys with me. So let's hop under the car and show you a couple things that I didn't even know. All right, let's jump into it. So first things first, for fun, I wanted to make sure I did indeed have a Pelican, and there you go. So that's awesome. That all checks out. You can see under here, it's got the very early version S&P, Fast Money Metalworks, Eurowise. Everybody now makes these basically bars that go on the front, stiffening bars, what have you. This is a really early version of it because you can see they cut out the core support in the front to fit the alternator, intercooler, and then put this support bar there to also hold it. It's paint matched, or at least to the engine, which is pretty neat. Alternator usually on the BBM kit though goes in the back of the engine, so I may make that change so I don't have to. You can see where they cut the core support right here and kind of notched it. But it's actually done pretty well. So where this is done, I'm probably not gonna, or obviously not do that to stepchild, so we'll move the alternator to the back like the BBM kit's supposed to be. Other than that, cool things to note, it's got a huge sway bar on the front. Not sure the make of that one. Could be a new speed option, although I've never seen that kind of setup. But it does match the rear. Sorry, it doesn't match. The rear also has a new speed bar, which I'll show you in just a second. What else is to note underneath the car? Not a whole lot. First look. Let's look on this side quick. Anything I can point out to you guys and show you kind of how the intercooling pipe comes down. Intercooler is right there. What else? Trans. That's really about it. You can see there's a 4-into-1 exhaust manifold, so it comes down as 4 equal length headers, goes into one, into a cat, and into the exhaust system. Another paint matched motor mount. Motor mount seems to be in pretty good shape. Everything is pretty dirty, but it's, you know, seems like there's very little mechanical wear on much the more I look at what's going on, meaning that I don't think it was used much. It's got urethane mounts inside of these. What else is to note? That's really about it. The one thing I think is unique though is this was before the time coilovers were really common. With all the mods this car has, it doesn't even have coilovers, which probably means it has probably some sport suspension kit in it. Not sure what that may be. New speed maybe. I don't recognize the springs. It does have Willwoods in the front, and you can see that it's got steel braided lines. Let's look behind the brakes. Oh, wouldn't you know it? Look at that. Momentum Motor Parts. Really early kit for mounting bigger brakes on a Mk1. That's super cool. And there is the Willwood front caliper. I'm gonna check the pads on that, see what the thickness is. I'm sure it's plenty, but just better enough to double check. What else? I can't really see what suspension those are, but that's okay. Let's go to the back of the car. All right, back of the car. So pretty cool exhaust. Seems to be, with the exception of this little booger weldish transition. I don't know what's going on there, but Goes 4 to 1 downpipe, exhaust manifold, kind of long-term race header into a cat, into what seems to be a mandrel bent exhaust system, which is pretty cool. You can see now the sway bar that's on the car, big, thick, new speed sway bar, so that's pretty cool. This car actually might be a lot of fun to drive, and hopefully I don't fall too much in love with it. I want to keep it the way it is. Magnaflow rear box into that DTM upswept exhaust of the 90s. Other than that, not a lot to note here. No rust, which is really nice, especially for an 86. Dirty, but like this is just superficial stuff. There's no actual rust on the car whatsoever, which is nice to see. So that means the body's in pretty good shape. Underneath the car, again, no rust. Strut towers, all that sort of thing, super solid. This is actually a pretty cool little car. But like I said, I'm looking around as you guys are looking, but you can see I did drag the car in here. This brake is completely seized, so we're gonna have to pop that off. I went ahead and popped off the front, and I panicked a little bit because the first thing I saw was boom, lock nut, and I was like, oh no! I never ever remember getting a key. Went and looked in the glove box, which I have never opened before, and thankfully it was sitting right there. So I'm gonna get rid of these keyed locks because I hate them. I'm gonna go ahead and replace them with an actual Volkswagen stud. But other than that, we're gonna carry right on with what we got going on. Take off the brakes, take off the wheels, check out the brakes, fix that lockup issue. I don't think the other side, don't quote me yet, I don't think this side is locked up. Oh dang, I lied. Both sides are locked up. Well, let's jump right into this. All right, so update time. I am very happy I started with the brakes because the brakes are a pretty laborious process, but I did sort it out. We're all freed up now, which is nice. What the issue was I believe this unit is completely rock solid. I tried to free it up as much as I could, but I couldn't. I don't want to claim that I know. You guys will know just as well as I will. I believe I've never actually seen, or I haven't worked with these calipers too often. This might be a Corrado model. So all I had was Mk1, 2, Scirocco, Golf kind of stuff hanging around. So I ended up using that. Difference being, not too familiar with what this one is, but it uses the e-brake cable along the top. You can see it comes in that hole right there, goes across to the, sorry, I'll use my hands here. The cable comes in through here and then hooks up here, and the fluid line actually comes in the bottom. Different than you're going to see on Mk1, 2, that sort of thing, where, or even 3, where the fluid line comes in the top and cable comes across the bottom. So I did have to quickly swap this around to make it work, but we've got it all set up. It'll work just fine for now. Everything's nice. There's a little bit of pitting here on this rotor. I'm not too worried about that. Pads looked okay. I feel like after a couple heavy brakings, it should clean up a little bit more for sure. I think one of the issues here too is this car was probably left for 3 to 4 or 5 years with the e-brake on, and it may have experienced moisture or something like that. And what ended up happening is everything kind of just locked up, as some calipers do. And unfortunately, this is one of those. The other side, I was lucky enough that it was locked up, but once I started working it a bit, it came free just fine. It's actually better than this one, obviously. Plus the one on the other side was actually powder coated black or painted black. So it withstood a little bit more of the corrosion resistance than this one did itself. But nevertheless, brakes are sorted. I went to the front as well, cleaned that up. I actually bled the system, put in a little bit of fresh fluid. Everything seems to be pretty good. So now it is time to move on to the engine now that I know this car is rolling. I will need to get out there and test the brakes a little bit before tomorrow's cruise. Hopefully I'll roll it around tonight. Starting to run out of time, but I'm happy that I worked on the brakes first because it was the biggest job. Next up, as you can see, got a whole pile of maintenance stuff lying here. New intake filter, new plug wires, which I had sitting around anyway, so I'm going to throw them on this car. New oil filter, new plugs. I got a little bit of a cleaner for the injectors just because I don't know what kind of fuel's in there. Then a little bit of an octane boost to kind of bring some life back to this fuel. I may drain the fuel, I'm not really sure. I think what I'm actually going to do is throw in the octane boost, add fresh fuel, because there's only like a quarter of a tank in this engine, or in this car, sorry, and then kind of blend all the fuel together and hopefully it'll come around, including the injector cleaner. I may pull the injectors here. I actually have my ultrasonic heating up. I may pull them to clean them and put them back. Who knows? See how much time we have left. But without further ado, let's throw this thing in the trash and keep moving forward with today. I'm getting pretty excited about this. All right, another update time. Time is definitely winding down. I am running out of daylight today, but we are moving along. So I have new plugs in, new plug wires, oil change, new filter, obviously, topped up the brake fluid, topped up the coolant. Everything looks pretty good. I did a belt check, made sure everything, looks pretty good, and it does. So I think we are good to go. Obviously I have nothing else to go off of. Again, I don't know how long ago the timing belt was done. The timing belt does look pretty, relatively new visually. Again, you can't really see much of those. They could quit at any time. So down the road, I probably will do a timing belt just to be certain. But, air filter, everything I can kind of do now is done. I topped up the power steering fluid as well. It's time to fire this thing. Make sure everything is good. I didn't actually end up cleaning the injectors just because I think I'm just going to run injector cleaner through them. The tank is actually far less than a quarter tank. So I think what I'm going to do is throw the injector cleaner stuff in there, add like 94 octane, add an octane boost, and then really just hope for the best with that. And I think some nice new clean fuel will do this motor a lot of good. And I think it's time to throw some wheels on the car. I was thinking about putting the ASAs back on, but a while ago, if you're a fan of the channel and watch pretty much every episode, you'll know that I took the Southern Way Glides, the Epsilons, and I mounted the tires off the steel wheels from the drag car before I turned it into the Corrado wheels. So I think we're gonna go ahead and throw some, these are in Porsche bolt pattern, throw some adapters on, and we'll put these Epsilons on this car. Drop it down, fire it up, and do a little brake testing. Make sure she runs real nice. Actually, let's just fire it up right now. Why not? Doesn't hurt anything, does it? All right. Can you hear the fuel pump? And we'll fire it off. Nice. It is running a little nicer than it was before for sure, but I think new fuel will help that a lot. So I'm gonna go ahead, put some wheels on it, and then we will drop it down.
Memories filling up my mind and I can't seem to push him back. These times ingrained my mind and I just can't let it go. How did I lose the way through the things that really matter? These complications spin my mind, but I know I gotta keep pushing through. Yeah, I keep doing my own thing, yeah, never looking back again. I can get it, I can make it, yeah, I know it, and I'm never looking back again. Yeah, never looking back again. I can get it, I can make it, yeah, I know it, and I'm never looking back again.
All right, guys, good morning. It is the next day, and that did not go as planned. It's a little bit after 6 a.m. Family's still in the house sleeping. It took a huge turn last night. I stayed out to the shop till about 2 a.m. I actually stopped filming because we ran into some issues. As you can see, first things first is the Epsilons are not actually on the car. And that's because when I threw on the rears, everything was fine. When I threw on the fronts, there was just probably like a 2 mil, 3 mil issue of the bolts on the back of the face actually hitting the Willwood caliper. And so that meant I couldn't run it unless I had a spacer. And unfortunately, because this is last minute, I didn't prep for that. So I threw the wheels back on and away we went. So I fired up the car, rolled the car outside, and it turns out absolutely none of the lights worked. Headlights turned on, but that was it. I had no running lights, I had no turn signals, no nothing, and I thought maybe it was going to be a big issue. It turns out every single light had its own issue, meaning that it wasn't like a fuse or anything like that. Each light had its own separate issue, whether it was a wiring problem, a grounding issue. I actually had to change the light switch inside. Let me show you what I did. So I had to lucky I have a lot of stock around here, but I had to change out the light switch. I had to put a new hazard switch in for turn signals. It was just crazy. The hazard switch wasn't giving power to the blinker, the flasher relay. What else? Front headlights weren't working properly due to the switch. The switch had like a momentary position where the lights wouldn't work, and it would like easily fall into that position. But now we have headlights, we have turn signals. I actually had no rear running lights, and again, that had to do with a grounding issue, but we have them now. It's a little early to fire up the car, but I think I need to push it outside and get it all cleaned up. But got a little bit of tasks to do today. What else did I do yesterday? I fixed the seat, so the seat's now, sports seat, it's now dumped as much as possible again because I'm a tall guy. I actually took off, there was some like 90s spec. You guys all remember these from the 90s. I'll show you real quick. These kind of pedals, oh man, they're terrible. But because of the width of the brake and the what left between the console and the actual brake pedal was barely enough to get my foot on the gas. So I took these off, went and grabbed some replacement, not new, but used rubber pedals. So I threw those on, you can see that there. Feet fit in there perfectly now. What else did I do? I just did a ton of stuff. I was getting everything ready for today. So I actually need to push this car outside, give it a bit of a squirt, wash up because this thing is filthy. I think everything today is now ready to go. The engine seems to be running pretty good. Oh, one of the other issues I ran into last night. Sorry, I'm just trying to recap. I got like 4 hours sleep because I was out here till like 2 in the morning and then went to bed. Well, it's now 6. I woke up at 6, a little bit before 6, and had a shower, wandered outside, and here we are. So anyway, when I step on the brake, the very last bit of its up travel, it stops. So it's actually enough to keep the brake light on and a little bit of drag on the brakes, because I actually did once around last night and I ran into that issue. So I don't know if it's a brake master issue. I don't know if it's a brake booster issue. Something's not quite right there. Or there's actually a return spring on the pedal box that actually returns the pedal up. I don't know if there's a little bit of slop in it and it's not quite returning it all the way. But anyways, what I'm kind of deciphering from all this is I think possibly, the owner before me, this is now 5 years ago now, had the same issue then, and actually was driving the car with some pedal pressure on the brake, so different than the front, but in the rear, because it's a single non-vented brake rotor. I wonder if it was just creating a ton of heat, and then they parked the car with the e-brake on when it was like in overheating type conditions, and then it just basically welded itself. The pads and the calipers and everything just welded themselves. They didn't move the car for 5 years. I show up to come look at the car and everything is stuck shut. So I'm thinking that's maybe the case. I have to look into it. I obviously don't have time to do it this morning but it could be, like I said, a booster issue. It could be a brake master issue. But nevertheless, it's just a small little bit of travel, a very light drag. Even with the pedal pressed and letting it return, it's enough that the car still rolls. It's just a little bit of resistance. So I just need to remember when I'm hitting the brakes, after I've kind of come to a stop, is to pull up a little bit on the pedal, just that last little bit. And I think that'll figure itself out. So guys, that's about it for today's episode. I want to transition, sorry, my light's on outside because it's so dark. I want to transition into the cruise episode, next episode, because there's supposed to be about 100 cars, or at least 100 people. I don't know how many people are bringing separate cars, but I'm really looking forward to what today brings. I may actually wake up the kid right now, bring him outside, get him ready, feed him breakfast, and we're going to go on this cruise. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you guys really like this car. I don't know how I feel about the car itself, but I feel like this, if today goes well, this might be motivation to keep the car together, but I really want to use this power plant in Stepchild, so I don't really see that happening. Guys, thanks very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you really do like this content, hang on till next one. We'll see the cruise that we have a lot of fun, and hopefully I make it. Till next time, guys, thanks very much. Take care.